When God remembered Miriam. The long winter in that house. Miriam sat quietly by the window, her chin resting on her palm, watching the fading light slip across the garden wall. Outside, the neighborhood children chased one another, their laughter carried on the wind. Inside her, the silence was heavier than stone. Years had passed in this house without the sound of a child's laughter. Instead, there were whispers in corridors, glances she could never quite escape. And sometimes the faint sigh of her own resignation. She had once imagined marriage as a partnership of two hearts, building together, waiting together. Dreaming together of the children they would one day raise. But reality had not been kind. Every glance from her mother-in-law felt like a silent sentence, the sentence of a wife without children. Every family gathering was an obstacle course of questions masked as casual remarks. So, any news yet? Delivered with those sly eyes and those lips that curved in almost smiles. She laughed them off in public. She learned to turn every painful question into a polite nod. But when night came and the walls of the bedroom closed around her, she buried her face in her pillow and wept. Lisa, her younger sister, was the only one who knew the weight Miriam carried. Lisa would visit often, sometimes staying the night just to be close, just to make sure Miriam didn't have to face the harshness alone. Still, Miriam's strength was fraying at the edges. The years of holding her head high had begun to feel like lifting a stone too heavy to bear. A prophecy in the sanctuary. That Sunday, the church was alive with music. It was a special service. A guest preacher had come to minister. The sanctuary was packed, the air electric with singing and prayer. Miriam sat halfway down the aisle, hands folded tightly, willing herself to focus on the words of worship, not the dull ache in her heart. The preacher's voice rang out, and then stopped suddenly. He stepped forward. He says your womb is open. Your waiting is over. Joy is coming to your house. The church erupted. Hands clapped, voices shouted praises, the music swelled again. Miriam trembled, tears spilling down her cheeks. Lisa took her hand and whispered, "That word was for you, Miriam." I could feel it. Don't be afraid. But in the far corner of the sanctuary, two women leaned together, smirking. Another barren woman believing in fairy tales, one murmured, "She'll be the same next year, just older," the other replied, stifling a laugh. Miriam heard them. The words cut sharp, but strangely, they didn't kill the spark of hope the prophecy had ignited. For the first time in years, she felt the warmth of light break through her long winter. When mockery takes the throne, the prophecy spread faster than she had imagined. By the next day, whispers were fluttering around the neighborhood like stray leaves in the wind. Her mother-in-law's expression turned sharper. That evening in the kitchen, she didn't even look up from slicing vegetables as she said, "Why don't you fix your fragile spirit first before thinking of having children?" Lisa, who happened to be visiting, froze mid-step. Her voice was firm but low. With respect, mocking a woman's barrenness is mocking the God who holds life in his hands. That's dangerous ground. The room went still. Miriam's chest tightened. She grabbed Lisa's arm and pulled her into the hallway. "Please, don't argue. I just want peace," Miriam whispered. Lisa shook her head. "Peace without boundaries isn't peace, Miriam. It's bondage." But Lisa insisted on taking her to the small clinic down the road. The doctor listened carefully, ran a few tests, then came back with a paper in his hand and a smile she would never forget. Miriam whispered through sobs. He has. He really has. Lisa's eyes softened. Don't tell anyone yet. Let your belly, and God's timing, speak for you. Guarding the secret in the storm. The pregnancy was a hidden treasure in her heart. Every kick, every flutter of life inside her was a private song between her and God. But the whispers didn't stop. In fact, they grew sharper. She's probably running to clinics to try another treatment. Poor thing still won't accept the truth, someone said at a family lunch. Miriam just smiled, excused herself, and went upstairs. In her room, she knelt and prayed, dedicating the child to the Lord, asking Him to shield the promise from every evil word. When truth breaks the room open. By the 6th month, the truth could no longer hide. Miriam's belly was undeniable. She walked into a family meeting, and the room fell silent. Her mother-in-law's eyes widened, her lips pressed tight. Daniel, her husband, stood. His voice was steady, his gaze unflinching. From now on, no one speaks to my wife with disrespect. This is her home. And she is the mother of my child. Lisa stepped forward, her tone like a sword. You laughed at her pain. You called her cursed. But you forgot, God delays only to make a greater statement. When you mock what He's building, you invite His judgment. Remember that. No one replied. The silence was its own confession. The birth of a promise. When the day came, the house filled with the sound of a baby's cry, and Miriam's sobs. She held her son close, feeling his tiny heart beat against hers. You, she whispered, are proof that God never forgets. Delay is not denial. A testimony that silences the mockers. At church, she stood before the congregation, her baby in her arms. This belly carried more than a child. It carried proof that God sees, that He hears, that He remembers. I forgive those who mocked me, because your mockery pushed me closer to Him. And I want every woman still waiting to know, your day is coming. Lisa stood beside her, eyes shining with tears. She didn't need to speak, her presence said it all. And Miriam, looking out over the faces before her, knew this was not just her story. It was a reminder written into the lives of everyone listening. God always remembers His children.